God is good all the time, all the time. God is good. So I'm just here to encourage someone, to remind someone of God's faithfulness, that He remains faithful even though we are faithless. And what better story that captures this than the book of Esther, where we see that the Israelites were taken into captivity, but yet in the same land of their captivity is the same land where one of them became a queen, and the other became the second in command after King Xerxes. And of course, naturally, it didn't. From the beginning, it wasn't like that. From the beginning, there was another queen, Queen Vashti, who the king held a banquet that lasted for some time, and he decided, let me call my queen and show off my queen and her beauty. And the queen was like, nah man, nah, I ain't doing that. So the king got mad and removed Queen Vashti. This is in summary, removed Queen Vashti from her royal position and decided, based on what his advisors told him, to look for another queen, among the virgin women. And that's exactly what happened. And among the women was Esther. And we see that they were placed under a guy called Haggai. And Haggai loved Esther. And through this, we see that Haggai walked with Esther. He walked with other girls, yeah, but because he favored Esther. And when the time came for Esther to meet the king also loved Esther. And we see God working there, because we see the softening of God. He softens the hearts of people. He hardens the hearts of people, like the way he hardened the heart of the Egyptian Pharaoh. So when Queen Esther became queen, later on we introduced to a guy called Haman. And Haman despised Mordecai, and he despised the Israelites. So what did he do? He went and persuaded the king how when he kills these people, he will actually get money. So the king accepted this, and it was a go-ahead, like on a certain specific date, all the Israelites would be killed. But yet still Haman wanted Mordecai dead. So when this happened, and then Queen Esther, they went on a fast for 3 days, she decided to have a banquet, a 2-day banquet. So on the first time when he had a banquet, and when he was leaving the queen's place, he met with Mordecai again. And Mordecai, of course, didn't bow down. And this angered him so much. And his people were like, just be gallows, and then you can hang him up the following morning. And this pleased him. So he decided the following morning he was going to go to the king and tell him he wanted the body of Mordecai. He wanted the head of Mordecai. And the same night, see how God works so beautifully behind the scenes. The same night, the king could not sleep, and he asked his people, like, yo, can you give me the records? And he was given the records. And when on the records, he saw that there was a man named Mordecai who helped him out in a time where there were 2 people who wanted to assassinate him. And one of the people, they were called Teresh. I remember Teresh because I have a cousin, kind of the same name. Mob love. So there was Teresh and Bath something. I can't remember the names. But we see that when the God had placed Bigthana and Teresh, yes. So God had placed Mordecai in a position where he could actually hear Bigthana and Teresh plotting to kill the king. And of course, Mordecai, because it was his role, he went and reported the matter, and they were assassinated. And so nothing happened to Mordecai at that time. And we see still in that thing where we see God did not the king did not reward Mordecai. We see its perfect positioning and why it had to be that way. Because that same night is the same night when the king realized, like, oh my gosh, I didn't reward Mordecai. So the following morning, the same morning where Haman was actually coming to ask for the head of Mordecai, is the same morning where the king said that Mordecai should be honored. And Haman goes around saying, he was ordered to go around saying that this is the man greatly honored by the king. And can only imagine how he was feeling. Then the same night, that was like, let's say in the morning, then in the evening, they were going back to the dinner for Esther. And that's where Esther revealed her heritage of being a Jew. And that's when Haman realized, oh my goodness, I messed up. And later on, we see that he tries to persuade Queen Esther, but then the position that he was found, and the king, he was like, "Yo, do you want to rape my woman even when I'm here?" And we see that Haman was killed in the same gallows that he had lifted up so that he could kill Mordecai. And later on in the story, the Jews actually fought back, and they had a 2-day period where they were actually just fighting and killing off their enemies. And what better story than that to show us that God is always with us? Even when we are faithless. The Israelites were faithless because they ended up worshipping other gods who weren't even real gods, who aren't even real gods, and turned their back to God. And God warned them countless of times, like, yo, stop. But they still didn't listen, so they went to exile. But even in their exile place, God was still with them. God still lifted his people up. God never left them. But a period in time, maybe they felt like they did, but God still raised them up. And later we see they actually went back to Israel, just as God had said. So take up courage. Know that God is always working behind the scenes, regardless of how the situation looks, regardless of how the situation seems. Even if you're doing stuff and the stuff you're doing, they're not going rewarded, just as Mordecai wasn't rewarded for helping the king from being assassinated, we see that later on he was rewarded. So take courage, take hope, trust in the Lord, and believe that he has a good plan for you. Have a beautiful day, and may God bless.